name is Joanna Jenkins, and I'm the chair of the this committee. I'm a lay member, and I just want to remind everybody that there are some standard rules, namely that mobile phones need to be switched off, and anyone who needs to ask a question, you'll please indicate, and we will get to them as soon as possible. We're not expecting a fire alarm or anything, so if anything, an alarm goes off, we will obviously need to look for it. The second agenda item is declarations of interest. I don't know if anybody, oh, sorry, before we do that, I should say that because there are quite a number of people in the presentation room with me, it would make sense to go round the room and then very briefly to introduce people on screen as well. As I said, I'm the chair of the committee, and if I move to my left, I'm Nadine Jones, Democratic Services Officer.
Good evening, I'm Jones, Strategic Governance and Planning Officer.
Mike Spanner, lay member on the committee.
Angela Harris, Strategic Manager for Policy and Executive Support.
Sorrel Jones, Principal Officer, Adult Services.
Angela Thomas, Head of Adult Services.
Kelly Gillies, Director of Transformation of West Morgan.
Morning everyone, Andrew Jarrett. I'm the Director of Social Services, Housing and Community Safety here in the Council. I'm here for agenda item 6.
Bore da pawb, cyflog Morwyn Daniel, cyfarwyddwr strategaeth a gwasanaethau corfforaethol, Director of Strategy and Corporate Services.
Good morning, bore da, Hugh Jones, I'm Director of Finance.
Morning, Ross Livingstone, Strategic Manager, Finance.
Morning, Louise Parry, Group Accountant, Capital. Morning, Catherine Asher, Group Accountant.
I've given colleagues permission to leave after their items. So if there is any disruption as the meeting progresses, that's the reason for it. And maybe we can just briefly go through the people on screen. So internal audit, if you wouldn't mind introducing yourselves.
Good morning, committee. My name's Steph Payne and I'm the audit manager.
And Audit Wales.
Morning all, Jason Blewett, Financial Audit Manager for Audit Wales.
Welcome.
Aeroslake, Performance Audit Manager, Audit Wales.
Good morning, it's Clarice, Audit Lead from Audit Wales.
Good morning, Bethan Hopkins, Performance Audit Lead for Audit Wales.
Thank you. And then we've got some other colleagues who sit on the committee, including lay members. Councillor Crowley, I can see your hand is raised.
Madam Chair, you went to declarations of interest. I just wanted to say, I'll introduce myself now, obviously, as Councillor Crowley, representing the South East Ward for Neath Talbot Council. And I have a declaration of interest in as much as I work part-time for Swansea Bay Health Board. So I've covered two aspects there, Chair. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Councillor Crowley. Any other declarations of interest?
Can I make a minor declaration as well? In paper 6 on urgent emergency care. My wife works for Wales Ambulance Services Trust, which is referenced in the report.
Thank you, Mike Spanner. In which case, if there are no other declarations of interest, we'll move on to agenda item 3, which are the minutes of the previous meeting. I will need proposer and seconder in due time. Are there any comments in relation to accuracy?
Yeah, I make a comment. I thought there was more detail in the minutes than the previous one. So thank you, Nadine, for doing that. If there was an easier and more informative read.
Yes, I totally agree. It's important to have the narrative behind some of the discussions, because otherwise we don't learn lessons if we're not able to take the points from the minutes. Any other points? If not, we'll move on to the forward work programme. Need to go back to the minutes. I need a proposer and seconder for accuracy. Mike,
happy to propose.
Thank you for proposing, Mike. And a seconder, please, from colleagues.
Happy to second, Chair.
Thank you very much, Councillor Oliver Stewart Davis. So forward work programme is for noting. Does anyone want to raise any points? I'd like to say that I find it very important that we have a forward work programme. It's something that I've certainly I certainly benefit from. One of the things which we will be picking up in due course is the fact that we need to ensure that liaison between this committee and the standing committee takes place. There's a proposal that I and the chair of standards will be meeting with Craig Griffiths in due course. So we will need to keep that in our minds as we work our way through the rest of the civic year. The fifth item is the Audit Wales programme and timetable Q1 update, which relates to April to June 2025. This is for Audit Wales to introduce.
Thank you, Chair. So, yeah, this is the usual paper we provide, setting out a progress against our work. So, as usual, I'll cover the financial audit bit and then pass over to AROS for the performance audit element. In terms of financial audit, as you noted, the paper is as at the 30th of June, so some things have moved on since then. You'll be aware from the agenda that our report for the audit of the account is on the agenda today, along with the amended accounts. So our audit of the main accounts is substantially complete. In terms of the grants work, we've started 2 of the 5 grants that are listed in the report, and we're working through those in line with the appropriate deadlines. So I'll pause there. I'll pass over to AROS and then happy to take any questions that you may have.
Thank you.
Yes, Jason, thank you. So on page 21 onwards, we cover the performance audit programme, and as an update on the 24-5 position, the 2 substantive projects that we had for 24-25 was firstly a review looking at cybersecurity arrangement, and secondly a review looking at risk management arrangement, and it has moved on, I guess, since Q1. So we've now published or issued the final version of those 2 reports to the council, and we're working with officers to agree a management response form before those come before committee. In terms of the 25-26 programme, our 3 pieces of work for this year are firstly looking at counter fraud arrangements within the council, secondly a thematic review looking at recruitment and retention challenges and overcoming those, and finally a review of decision making arrangements. And we are at the moment timetabling these 3 reviews with a view to delivering all of them by the end of June. The update also includes some references to some of the recent national reports that we published or in train. So, for example, the temporary accommodation reports we published in early summer, and the capital planning in local government is a national study that we're currently drafting the reports, and children's services is a review that we're currently planning the delivery. Thank you. I'll pause there for any questions. Thanks.
Thank you very much. I did note on page 25 under the heading Estim that the word process is halfway down the page. I'm not sure whether that should be progress. It reads has made sufficient progress in addressing key elements, which I assume must be progress. Just a does anyone have any points they want to raise?
Can I raise a very quick question, and it's a bit late in the day, I accept, but on page 21, review of risk management arrangements, I just want to know whether the minutes of the governance and audit committee featured in part of the work you did in looking at that as external audit, or whether you did get to speak with any members of the governance and audit committee, because I know we've made a number of comments about risk management in the preceding 12 months.
Thank you. Yeah, I'm happy to take that one. Yes, we reviewed the sample of minutes and the number of documents that were issued from the council, and we had a number of interviews both with officers and members across the council in informing that it is a piece of work that we've delivered across a number of authorities, and we're going to be reporting well towards the autumn now. I think Neath is the first one that we've issued as final, and we're going to be reporting the other 5 now over the course of the next few months. But in speaking to in informing the work, yes, we have spoken to members of the audit committee as well.
Thank you.
I certainly was interviewed as chair of the committee in respect of assurance and risk assessment, and also the question of review of risk management arrangements. I know I've got another interview coming up later this year. So yes, they have involved us, and obviously officers have been involved in providing me with information that I needed to hand as well. Any other points anyone wants to raise? In which case this agenda item was for information, and therefore we note the report and move on to agenda item 6, which is the Audit Wales report, headed Urgent and Emergency Care, Flow Out of Hospital, West Glamorgan Region, dated March 2025. The report can be found on pages 35 to 94. Officers are going to introduce the report, and I've given officers permission to leave at the end of this. I'm fairly sure it will generate a number of questions. So who's going to introduce the report, please? Bethan, good.
I'm happy to, Chair, unless you want to, Andrew, director, to go first. Or Andrew, are you happy for me to jump in and introduce?
I'm happy, Bethany, just say a couple of words if that's okay. So I think Chair, I just first of all want to take the opportunity to thank Audit Wales for what is I think a very comprehensive report and a very important report for us across Wales. So this is North Wales study, but actually the report you've got in front of you from Audit Wales today is particularly about the region, which is the West Glamorgan region. So that's Swansea Council, Neath Talbot Council, and Swansea Bay University Health Board. But also in the work that we do across the region, we'll include looks at the third sector as well, who support us in helping to have timely hospital discharges. Late discharges of care, so people being stuck in hospital longer than they need to, is something which impacts us all, whether it's because we have loved ones or people we know wanting to get into hospital who aren't able to get into hospital in a timely way, whether people need ambulances and can't get ambulances because they are stuck outside of hospital because they can't debus their patients into accident emergency because there's no free beds across the hospital. So it impacts us on us all, and it's been highlighted on many occasions across the UK in the press around the pressures that are around this area of work across health and social care across the whole of the UK. Also wanted to say before Bethan comes in that the recommendations from our point of view, absolutely accept them from Neath Talbot's Council's point of view. We recognise the importance of doing work around those recommendations. And once Bethan has introduced the report from an Audit Wales point of view, we will take you through what we've done as far as those recommendations. I would say that from our point of view, the report is historical. So we recognise where we were then, but we are in a very different place now, and we will grab the opportunity, Chair, if you don't mind, to explain where we are at the moment in response to some of this. But if it's okay, Chair, I'll hand over to Bethan and she can talk you through the actual report from Audit Wales. Bethan?
Thank you.
Wonderful. Thank you. Thank you very much, Andrew. So good morning, Chair, and good morning, everybody, and thank you so much for having me. I know I've introduced myself, but my name's Bethan Hopkins, and I'm one of the performance audit leads here at Audit Wales. I am also part of the team who delivered the urgent and emergency care work across Wales in all of the health boards, actually. So just for information, this is a regional report looking at cross-sector work in between the health boards and local authorities. As Andrew has mentioned, it looked to the reasons behind discharge delays, their causes, the impact they're having on urgent and emergency care system within the Swansea Bay region. I will take the report as read, and I know Andrew has already said that he'll take some questions as well afterwards, but I will just give a few of the headline findings, if I may. For your information, this has been done in a slightly different way because we've cleared the report for factual accuracy through the regional partnership boards in collaboration with the health board and the local authorities. not to embarrass her, I can see Kelly Gillins is there with us today. And can I just say a really big thank you to her, because I can't tell you how many times I had to contact Kelly back and forth for various bits of information and bothered her for bits and pieces, and she's been so helpful. So thank you so much for all of the interaction from the officers on this. It's been really great. So this was an extensive audit, which included cross-sector interviews, a lot of data collection and analysis. I do recognise that this audit was a moment in time. Andrew's already touched on that, and data capture was relevant to the publishing period. But I do hope it's provided you with a comprehensive overview of the position, the successes and the challenges within the region at the time. So overall, we found that while partners understand and show a commitment to improving patient flow at a hospital, performance remains extremely challenging. Partners must continue to work collaboratively to mitigate the challenges posed by reduced workforce capacity and the increased complexity of demand, must continue to develop shared systems to manage information and ensure activities and risk are joined up and monitored on a whole system basis. You will see further down the report that we made 7 recommendations, 4 of which are directed at the Council jointly with the Health Board. They cover 7-day access to services, training and guidance, embedding the role of trusted assessor, and having oversight of the regional risks through the Regional Partnership Board. We have received management responses to the recommendations in the report, which you will see at Exhibit 27, I think it is, in this report. And now, obviously, it's for the committee to be assured that the responses to those recommendations are sufficient, and that they are appropriate. I am more than happy to take any questions in relation to the report that I've presented to you today, Chair. Alternatively, if your officers are best placed to answer them, that's absolutely fine too. So happy to take any questions.
Thank you. Exhibit 27 that you just referred to actually starts at page 85, just for everybody's information.
Thank you.
Thank you. Maybe, Andrew, you and your team could brief us.
Yeah,
and you
absolutely.
mentioned about where we are, and I suppose what we will also be interested in is where you intend to get to.
Absolutely, Chair. So if I hand over to Kelly Gillings, who's already been introduced, to give a regional overview of where we're at, because we do a lot of the work regionally. But then Angela and Sorel will just talk you through a bit about the specifics from a Neath Talbot point of view. Kelly?
Yeah, thanks, Chair. So I'll go through each recommendation and tell you where we're at and what we've been doing over that period of time. So the first recommendation was about the quality of information and the fact that we didn't have a real live time system where people could see what was going on with individuals in the hospital sites for discharge. What we have done since January, actually, because our numbers actually were higher at a point in time. Over the winter period last year, we were running at around 279 delays in discharge. Today, we're 189, so we're 100 better, and actually our average is 180 at the moment, and we're holding steady. But one of the key advantages that we now have as a region is that we have a single dashboard that everybody can access. So social workers, health staff, everybody on the wards, you can all see at any point in time live information about what is happening with an individual and the reasons why they have a delayed transfer out of hospital or to the next destination, because sometimes it's into the community, sometimes it's for other facilities. So I think that's been a huge piece of work. And even yesterday, we were in Welsh Government presenting on all of this yesterday, and the other regions don't have this. I think one other region has it. The others were all saying they would really like to have a system where social services staff could access the health board information. So the signal system has been instrumental in us moving some of this forward. So that's the first one. So obviously the quality of information has improved as well. Board rounds now should update the reason for a person delayed in hospital every day. So every 24 hours, we should have an updated position. There are still some nuances we've got to iron out on different wards, but we're working through that as part of a training programme at the moment. Weekend discharges was the recommendation too, and we need to do some work around out of hours discharge planning. So there's a couple of pieces of work for that. Some of this is quite medically led. So there's something called a criteria-led discharge plan that consultants and doctors can put in place where they say there's a number of things you can do, and if those things happen, then you can discharge an individual. That's working well in some areas, not so well in others, and Health Board are actually tackling that at the moment. I was actually talking to somebody about it yesterday. The other things that we are noting, there is a bit of a peak and a trough situation Monday to Friday. Monday to Friday, and then Saturday and Sunday are slightly different. We do notice an increase of people waiting to be discharged on a Monday. So that's normal. That's exactly the same as the rest of Wales. But there are things that we can do in order to mitigate that, and plans are in place to be doing those things. In terms of training and guidance, since we've re-engineered all the governance arrangements, all of the standard operating procedures have been reviewed. We have things like a reluctant discharge policy now, because some people are choosing to stay in hospital, or families are choosing to leave their loved ones in hospital and are reluctant to move on to the next destination of care. So what we've done some information, leaflets and things to give to people as they arrive at hospitals. They realise that they're not going to stay there indefinitely, that they'll get well, and we'll move them on to the next station of care. What we have to do now, and what the team are working on at the moment, is that training programme for all of the wards, that everybody gives the same information to all of the service users and their carers at the same time when people are going through their journey. So lots of work has gone on. Some of that is going to be signed off at the board the end of this month, and then we'll be able to issue it live and put it on our website, etc. The trusted assessor model, we always had trusted assessors in our region, but we've had to refresh that model, particularly on a discharge basis. So Sorrel has been one of the officers working on what we are calling a trusted assessor form. You might hear from other regions calling it an ETOC form and different things like that. But effectively what we're saying is that it doesn't matter who the person is that's caring for the person in hospital. If they fill out this information, then we need to trust the information that's given to us to move people on. So that form has now been developed, and I believe there's a standard operating procedures that matches that. The bit we're working on at the moment is with digital services in order to get that inserted into the signal system, so that you are able to fill out the form and it just all ports the information across. It's proven to be a bit challenging, but we're working with digital services and Talbot to get that done. We're hoping to go live with something around the end of October for that, so it'll be ready and input for the winter period. In terms of the portfolio board membership, we've had interesting policies that come out from Welsh Government. So one of the things is you had the 6 goals programme, which 2 of their goals looked after urgent and emergency care.
Can you just repeat that at the start? You said it's something called
sorry, it's the 6 goals programme. Yeah,
of course it's referred to in the paper.
Yeah. That came out of the NHS executive, as it was called then. So the health board had to set up a whole governance arrangement around all of that. It was separate from the regional partnership board. What we did as leaders all came together with the chief executives and Andrew and Dave and others, all agreed that actually having 2 different governance infrastructures for what essentially is one programme of work wasn't working for us, because we had differences of work going on. We were trying to build the same house but doing different houses effectively internally. So what we've done, and we're the only ones in Wales again to have this, is we've now got one governance structure where all of that work is now condensed into one programme of work, which covers so in all of those sessions, we have secondary care officers, nurses from the wards, Sorrel and her team, Swansea Council teams, everybody working together, including the third sector, on making these improvements. What would have been happening when this report was done was you had the governance going on around the 6 goals programme reporting to Health Board, and our governance reporting to the Regional Partnership Board. So I think it's testament to the leadership of our area that we were able to pull that together, and others are working towards it, but not quite there yet. That is helping us. We've still got things to do though, that's the truth of it. Risk oversight was the last recommendation for recommendation 6 and 7. And again, you have multiple risk logs. So Neath Talbot Council will own a risk log, Swansea Council will own a risk log, and Health Board will own a risk log. Some of those things were actually managed by all of the parties involved. So what we now have is a programme risk log, for which we share the risk. So some of the things that we've now identified is that something might be identified in Neath Talbot's risk log that actually is on our programme risk log as well, for us to work on things together to mitigate those risks. So that's where we're at the moment. I've done it in paraphrased fashion because there is a lot of work going on at the moment. But today, I was just looking at a slide deck that we've had from Welsh Government. Where's the market? Sorry, a PowerPoint presentation that Welsh Government issue for us every month that tell us our position against the rest of Wales. We are ahead of the targets that we were set by the Cabinet Secretary that we need in place for November. So we're already meeting those targets and we're holding steady. So we're hoping in the winter period that if without too much more demand, we'll be able to maintain the system. And we are ahead of the rest of the regions across Wales at the moment in terms of where we are with our pathway of care delays, which is the complete converse to where we were running into winter last year. So lots of work.
Thank you. Obviously, other colleagues are going to come in as well. So we'll do all that first before we get to questions, because I know there are questions.
Okay. I suppose from a head of service for Neath Talbot perspective, I suppose I'm pleased to say I don't recognise those findings as of today. I think we've moved on considerably. I think what I would like to add is some context. I know we said this was a point in time, but it was a specific point in time for Neath Talbot. So at that time, in November 23, we were closing a 90-bedded residential nursing care home, and we were decanting 67 residents to alternative accommodation in a 2-week period.
Just for the minute, can you explain where that unit was?
It was in Neath. It was a 90-bedded care home in Neath, which had been failing for some time. And we just took a decision. We took a decision as a local authority, enough is enough. Those residents weren't safe. They were not having the best support or care, and we moved them within a fortnight. Sorry, my voice is sounding croaky. Within, at that same period of time, next couple of months, we also had 3 domiciliary care providers handing back packages of care. So that was people with failure, domiciliary care failure in the marketplace, handing them back to the local authority. We would have to provide that care ourselves or source it from somewhere else. So I think that was unprecedented for us in Neath Talbot. It was a particularly bad time. Not being defensive in the least, but I don't think you see many people moving 67 residents in a fortnight, into safe places. And again, we managed all that. It went under the radar. We managed it all. But I think it says something about where we were back at that time. That could happen anytime. A care home could fail tomorrow. We could be in exactly the same position. But, that was a whole council approach and health colleagues going into that home and getting those people out as safely as we could. We had our own staff working overtime, weekends, etc., just to maintain the safety of those residents. I think I'll ask them in a minute to move on to where we're at, because there's so much that's happened. I don't know if you want to ask questions first or...
I think we'll have the presentation first and then get to the questions, I think is the best way.
So just sort of expand from a Neath Talbot social work team really perspective. Since that space of time, we have expanded the social work team. We recognised that we needed to increase workers within that team to manage the demand coming through. In relation to the trusted assessor model, obviously Kelly spoke about the referral form that's underway and the processes there. But we have moved forward with that in Neath Talbot as well. So we had a position previously where everybody required a social work assessment to come out of hospital and needed to access our services. But we've moved on from that now. So when people are requiring a package of care, we are already trusting the health board referral information that's come through to us to go straight into accessing a package of care rather than having to wait for an assessment at the hospital. So we've seen a huge reduction in our delays and speeding up our processes from doing that. We've also had some changes jointly within the health board in relation to what happens at the front door of the hospital as well. So we've got an increase in those referrals coming through and processes to manage that. So just a bit quick one really, it would be restart of packages of care. So when somebody's in hospital and requiring a restart of their domiciliary care package, previously they were also all coming to the social work team for oversight, whereas now we use the trusted assessor model to discharge back to their providers, providing there's been no significant changes. One other thing for me to mention really would be integration of artificial intelligence, AI, that we've been trialing within the team at the moment. So this has proved quite successful in speeding up assessment timescales for that. And it's still piloting at the moment, it's still underway within the team, but that's working quite well for the team. I think the only other bit for me to add, it would be our sort of current position really. So as of now, we've got, obviously this changes hourly, but right now there's sort of 14 individuals that are open to the social work team for just social work intervention. And within that, we've got 2 awaiting allocation, 3 awaiting assessments. I won't go into all of the reasons, but it's a very sort of different picture to where we were at back when this report was written really. So we're quite proud of where things are moving forward, and we know there's still an awful long way to go, but we're working through it. So
I think one area just to add as well is that we're just about to open a reablement unit So we were out of sync with our partners in Swansea who had something called Bonamine House. We brought our Tremorglyn residential care home back in-house April this year. We're good to go. We're just waiting for therapy start now. But what will this do is prevents people having to remain in hospital for any length of time. And it prevents, hopefully, people going into residential care, but having a period of bereavement and returning home. So that's another biggie for us, if we can get that up and running in the next week.
And how many people will the re-ablement unit? 12. Thank you. If that's all from officers for the moment, I can see we've got one question. I know we will have others. Councillor Clemens Williams.
Thank you, Chair. I'd like to, I've got some real concerns, to be fair, but not so much from our end. Looking at the report, the page. So looking at the report, a lot of the, and especially the first paper that been issued, the lots of issues within the health service. I know somebody who had a letter from the health service for an appointment or for appointments for tests before going to see somebody. They had 3 different letters for 3 appointments in the same place, only sort of different tests. I think there's a lot of waste in the health service. Everything stops on a weekend. If you're in hospital on Friday, you know you're not going anywhere until a Monday morning. So I would like to say very well done to our team. I know that they're working very, very hard. And I know from, bless him, Councillor Richards, being in social services for so long, how hard the staff work there. And very often we're very quick to criticise. I'm sure we can always improve, but my main concerns are more around the health service. Fragmented discharge processes seems to have been sorted from what's been said this morning. And the information sharing, which is really, they were 2 things that I did highlight. So it was really good to hear that. And it's nice to know that we're leading on some of these things as well. The thing is, when you hear about hospitals struggling with people stuck in beds and not being discharged, very often you hear it's because they're waiting for a package, or and a lot of that can be down to finding packages for people, which is sometimes, which is very much out of our control. But I think some of this is down to, as I say, down tools on a Friday afternoon, and nobody goes anywhere. I know that's been touched on this morning as well. But I really think there's a lot of waste in the NHS and we could be doing better. But thank you for all the work that's gone into it. We don't always thank people enough. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor. Any response to Councillor's words, Mr. Jarrett?
Yes, thanks, Chair. And thanks, Councillor Clement Williams, for those comments. I think you're absolutely right. So it's important for everyone to keep in mind that delayed discharges of care are not just about social care delays. There's a myriad of reasons why people might be delayed in hospital. I think from our point of view, as far as this report is concerned, it looks at the 3 organisations across the region. And what I would say is in Neath Talbot, we believe that we have learnt the lessons from this and we followed the recommendations. And we've also played our part in ensuring that the systems across the region are working. What, of course, we can't do is we can't take control of the health board or Swansea Council either. But I'm confident that we've done what we need to do, albeit, as the officer said, that we've still got work to do. But we have taken these recommendations on and taken them forward, as Councillor Clement Williams has said. So thank you for that.
Thank you. Do other colleagues have comments?
If we talk about delays, I probably could say that the biggest area is where we get people stuck in the court of protection or best interest assessments. They're the areas where it's more difficult to get people out quickly, and that is the law. We are stuck with some of that, but I know there is some work foot with health to try and progress that quickly. That is one area I would highlight that's still work in progress. We're well aware of it and we're trying to move that forward. But that's probably the single biggest issue. We've referenced families. Very often families will vote with their feet. We pick this up all the time in terms of whether somebody owns a house, you know, you'll have siblings involved, you know, it can get difficult. But we manage all of this on a day-to-day basis as part of the course.
Thank you. Obviously, it's a very informative report. I found it a fascinating read. I'm very sure everybody in the room and then everybody reading the report will chime with them, because we've all had experiences that fit in with this. I suppose really, obviously it's a snapshot in time. So what happens next, in the sense of, are the Welsh Government going to ask you to report? You obviously mentioned having meetings with them and that sort of thing. So is this something that's going to be on the agenda for the next probably 20 years, or what happens next?
Thanks, Chair. So there are monthly meetings on pathway of care delays in particular. They call them Ministerial Priority 1 meetings because it's one of the Cabinet Secretary's key aims and objectives. So every month we go to a meeting with NHS executive staff from Neath, Talbot, staff from Swansea, myself and Health Board as well. So Deb Lewis, the Chief Operating Officer for the Health Board, comes to, and effectively they go through our numbers and then try and help us navigate some of the things that we might find difficult to resolve. So Andrew just mentioned something there, but around the court of protection, it's a legal basis. We can't do anything about individuals within a court of protection. But the other one that poses us some issues is the mental capacity assessments. Yesterday we were hearing presentations from all over Wales, and one of our regions seems to have done some work which we could probably learn from, and we're taking that on. So we're sharing all of that quite regularly. There are other meetings then the Cabinet Secretary holds, and there's a whole governance system that comes out of Welsh Government. And one of the things we also have to do is around building community capacity. So how we are supporting district nursing over a 7-day period, end of life, palliative care type work. There's also work within the local authorities around domiciliary care and reablement services, and there's a piece of work there. So all of this is hot on the agenda at the moment at the Welsh Government level. So we are asked a lot of questions a lot of the time, and as I understand it, going into the winter period, we may be changing the census to go weekly. So we heard from Nick Good, one of the senior officers in NHS Executive yesterday. We're hoping it's not going to be the case, because that's a lot of work for a lot of officers to get that in on a weekly basis and hold this monthly. So things are ramping up for the winter period, and I think they would just want us to make sure that we're on track with as much as we can be with the demands pushed on the system.
I think I could just add to that, Chair. I mean, Sorrel and the team are daily in these meetings, literally round the clock, you know, round the hour. How many people are we getting out on a daily basis? That is the focus all the time. And we have to fight back in social care because we do a lot more. It's not only about getting people out of hospital. Yes, that's the major thing. But it's you know, that monthly maybe at a certain level, but it's daily. It's a constant.
Thank you. Mike, you want to ask him?
Can I pick up on you talked about progress recommendation 7 on risk registers and development of a regional programme risk log, I think you call it. Yes. I just want to understand, how does that interact with local Neath Talbot risk registers? So it's not lost sight of there.
So the way I'm visioning it at the moment, because it is a work in progress, there are things that we are identifying. I would expect that any risks that are put into the regional risk log that belong with Neath Talbot, the Neath Talbot own that risk and update the regional register and vice versa. So if there's a risk that's owned by the Health Board but impacts our programme of work or impacts pathway of care delays, the risk owner's Health Board, but they must keep us up to date about what they're doing to mitigate those risks, and we would challenge them. Obviously, we don't look at all of the risks because we'd be there for days probably just looking at the risk log, but we would look at the most serious risks and where we're facing them. Does that make sense?
Yes, it's good. Thank you.
Councillor Crowley?
If I may, Chair, just talk a little bit about currently in Morriston Hospital, so I'm right on the chalk face of it, as it were. But you know, there are, once you get past A&E, and that's critical in terms of ambulance services and people waiting in corridors and the delay in A&E. Once you get into a ward and you finally get a bed, you know, the service is second, and I wouldn't want it any other way. If I'm honest, the level of care I've experienced through the last couple of years has been second, so once you're in and you're in a system, it works great. There are blockages within the system, of course, and of course there are strains on the system whilst you're in there in terms of capacity and certain elements that people, bed blocking, etc., that could go home. For instance, a pick line, if we had more people to insert a pick line, which would allow people access to get home and go on a drip at home, you know, then in my little ward alone, there's 3 beds that would be available for somebody else. So there are blockages in the system, and that's something that the health board has to challenge. We as a local authority are doing our very best, as the health board are, but there are challenges within the system. They're heavy, and of course, I mean, everybody's trying to do their best in a very tight circumstances in terms of finance. But you know, once you're in, that's all I can say is once you're in, you wouldn't want to be anywhere else. Thanks, Chair.
Thank you very much. Certainly, I know there's been a brief conversation about the risk register and things, and I know obviously the health board's risk register is where it captures most things. But I suppose in a way, because we talk about risk registers in this committee frequently, we'll be very interested to know what the Neath Talbot Council risk register actually reflects, what it shows, what it highlights, and in a way, maybe for future conversations about future topics, it would be helpful if the section from the risk register that relates to a particular report actually comes to the meeting as well, because that way we would then be able to say a snapshot in time, as of this month, September, this is what the Neath Talbot Council risk register in respect of topic A, B, and C actually highlights. I certainly think it would be beneficial for us, because the risk register has to be a live document, but it would assist our conversations. So that's a point for senior managers, basically. Any other questions that anybody wants to raise? No, in which case, thank you very much to all of you for joining us. We will look forward to progress in due course.
Thank you, Chair.
I'm going to take a second on colleagues. Yeah. Thank you. We now move to the next agenda item, which is agenda item 7, which is on page 95. And this is the annual governance statement. It runs through approximately 100 pages, and Noel and Hugh, I believe you're going to introduce the report.
I'd like to hand over to Louise, who's going to introduce the report on our behalf.
There we are. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you, Chair. So this is the annual governance statement for 24-25. It's been compiled for the year, taking into account the super solace delivering good guidance in local government framework. We've also taken into account this year an addendum which was released in May 2025. So this addendum focuses on mainly the principles which are included in the original framework, but it's just sort of re-emphasising some of the work that needs to be referenced within the AGS. We did take it into consideration once developing this, but it's stipulated that it needs to be taken forward from the 25-26 AGS. So the AGS forms part of the statement of accounts. This AGS has been taken to Cabinet back in July, and is brought to yourselves today for information. We just want to note, since it went to Cabinet, there has been, as set out on page 10 of your covering report, some sections which have been amended as a result of it going to Audit Wales to be reviewed. So those points have been set out. In addition to the points that are set out, there's also a line that we need to remove before going to publication, which is on page 67 of the AGS, which references the Auditor General signing off on the planning and improvement. Sorry, I've got the word in somewhere. The Auditor General certifying the Council has met its legal duties for improvement planning and reporting. That isn't a function of Audit Wales and the Auditor General, so we have to remove that section as well.
Do you know which page that appears to in our pack? Just so
Sorry.
we've got it.
On page. Geez, I should have put that in as well. It is page 168. So it's in relation to external auditors. It's the last sentence. The Auditor General has certified that the Council has met its legal duties. So that line will be removed before publishing. So the AGS also sets out the improvement areas that were identified in the 23-24 AGS and what progress has been made in year. And it also sets out the identified improvement areas on for 25-26. That's set out on page 78. And the progress on those will be presented to Governance and Audit in January of 2026 as a half-yearly update. So happy to take any questions.
Thank you. Colleagues, I don't know if you have any questions. I know I had an indication that there might be some questions. Mike?
I did have some questions, but you did answer it in your introduction. That was good. I think my only other comment might be around the action plan itself. It's not an action plan as such, it says improvement actions.
Yeah.
I just thought some of the wording was a little bit generic. So I think it was on page 181, reference 149. I just think it could have been more, it could have been bolder and more specific. It just says progress recommendations made. We could have said, let's complete all 16 recommendations in the internal audit report by the touch point in time. But it was, I accept a pedantic point, and it would be easier to track based on that.
No, that's really helpful. Thank you. We'll take that on board.
And in a way, a separate column, because it comes under improvement actions to be undertaken during the period running up to the end of 2026. A separate column would actually highlight where the progress was going to be made, and the point that Mike has just raised. So, any other points? Oh, Mark Owen, I can see your hand raised.
Thanks, Chair. Yeah, it's on page 189 of the papers, section 5, stakeholder engagement and business plans. And it talks about the council using an appropriate documented option appraisal methodology to demonstrate value for money on its decisions. And I just wondered, is there anything in that kind of methodology or framework that looks at post-investment appraisals, almost akin to a benefits realisation framework? So I guess, is there as much rigour then on looking at what we've done rather than just getting things agreed and implemented? So yeah, just a general question.
So I come in, Chair. So yeah, thank you, Mark. So the reason that this is graded medium is exactly your point, that we don't have that sophisticated option appraisal paperwork documentation in place as yet. So you will have heard earlier Audit Wales mention they're doing a review of capital planning around, I think it was 6 councils in Wales. We are waiting for the outcome of that review and the recommendations, and then we'll be looking at put a more sophisticated, refined template in place, which will include exactly what you just said. So that's why we've graded at a medium in terms of the AGS at the moment. We're waiting for that Audit Wales review, and then we'll take some work on board ourselves to address that.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you. Mike?
Apologies, I do have another question, Chair. So I think I'm in the right bit, but anyway, so we're on page 186. The financial management code of self-assessment frame. So It was just standard reference A, given a green rag status. I have to say, from reading that from the narrative contained in the 2024-25 update, it didn't read to me as the most compelling thing to support a green rating, I have to say. Yes, meet overall budget available, but VFM is much broader than that. And then the next sentence seems to tail off to nowhere. It just says, my packing way, in terms of requirements of the code, full stop.
So I think this is an ongoing discussion that we have internally and with audit wheels around how you can, in a meaningful way, compare costs across local authorities where people prepare their management accounts differently and people prepare their statistical returns in different ways and not consistent. So over the years, we've had benchmarking clubs which have gone by the wayside because of the fact that you just are literally comparing apples and pears on occasion. So we have asked Audit Wales colleagues for sort of examples of best practice around this area, but we are struggling to find people who are able to do this in a meaningful way. So, but taking your point on board, how does that then leave us with a green rag status? So I think that may be something to reflect on for next year when we prepare this document. And the second comment was around, sorry, I couldn't see what you...
Just the second sentence in your update, I think, right, I'm struggling to fit it on my screen, sorry, but I think it says, just in terms of requirements of the code, full stop.
So it's either missing part of that sentence or it's the leading to the third sentence.
We'll have to look at that. I'm not sure.
Yeah,
just to double check that.
There we are. Thank you. And maybe we can have an understanding in the next meeting.
Yes, okay.
Information. So, Councillor Clement Williams.
Thanks. Back to the reports. Sorry, I don't know what I've clicked on you. One sec. Sorry. Yeah. I raised annual reports way back when I first became a councillor in 2012, and ever since then we've been having updates to say that 70-80% of reports, annual reports, have been done, or whatever, PDRs, whatever. How do we know that the reports have actually been done? Is there a computer system that logs when they've been done, who hasn't been done? Is it just word of mouth? That kind of thing. Because in my book, unless somebody's not in work for one reason or another, there's no excuse for not having an annual appraisal. But we should also be having one-to-ones on a regular basis as well. And I still haven't seen anything really that convinces me that we actually know the figures and that we actually are carrying out these processes. I know from being a manager myself of staff that it's when you get into a room with someone that they actually bring up what issues are. You are able to ask them, is there anything you need, or is there anything you need me to do for you? This is where things are identified. Stuff, because it's mentioned as well about progress and not feeling valued. Nobody discusses any progression. By having these meetings, if it's done well and properly, sorry, my ringer is off, but I don't know how to turn my beeps off. If it's done well and properly, they're very, very rewarding sessions. You learn about the work issues that people have. So I'd like really to have, maybe in the next or in meetings to come, Chair, a report on how we know, etc. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor. I know appraisals is covered on a number of occasions in this pack of papers. I know it particularly comes up under the draft self-assessment paperwork. But as far as the annual governance statement is concerned, officers, any comments about what Councillor's just mentioned?
Thank you, Councillor Clement Williams, for your observations regarding appraisals, and I totally agree they are a key element in terms of how we engage with our workforce, in terms of understanding what challenges our staff face, how we can support our staff to deliver on their objectives, to set their objectives, and also to ensure that we're putting in place appropriate and adequate development training for our staff. So an appraisal serves a myriad of really important aspects when it comes to our workforce. I think it's been accepted that there's a lot more work to be done with regards to the appraisal process across Neath Talbot Council. Within the future of work strategy delivery plan for this year, for 25-26, addressing some of the areas for improvement around appraisals has been identified. So Sheena and the team will be progressing with some key areas of work around appraisals. The staff survey that was undertaken by Sheena and the team also identified that there was an ad hoc approach to appraisals across the authority. There wasn't a consistent approach, not just in the way that they were conducted, but maybe in the way that we were capturing that information. So there was, it would be fair to say, maybe a lack of corporate oversight with regards to how many staff were actually receiving an appraisal. And therefore that is something that will need to be addressed. We can now capture that information within iTrend, and iTrend is the HR back office system, if you like, where we manage our workforce in terms of workforce elements. So, a number of those areas have been identified. I know the importance of a really robust, fair, transparent appraisal system. It's important that every single member of staff has that appraisal. I've certainly had mine with the chief executive, and it's important that opportunity is there for every single member of staff. Now, I appreciate the arrangements within social services are slightly different because they have a slightly separate model there around regular case meetings. But I can assure you that we've identified this as an area for improvement. The chair is right, which references it's been acknowledged within the corporate self-assessment as well. So it is flagged up there, but more than happy to bring back further information in the future, Councillor Williams, with regards to the progress that we've been made. Hopefully that'll be articulated in the next time we bring this AGS, but also the next time we bring our corporate self-assessment before the committee. Yeah.
Thank you. I think we will want to come back to it when we talk about the subsequent paper. Councillor, is your hand still
Could I
raised
just
on
come
the
back
same
on
point?
one thing, please?
Yes, certainly.
When you're saying about social services having a different sort of thing, it still sits in the same place. You may have regular meetings with your manager to discuss cases, etc., but there should always be one that's about you, and separate to those meetings. It shouldn't be sort of jumbled in together. It needs to be one meeting simply about the person, their needs, what you can do for them, etc. But thank you for your update, and that was very interesting. But we've dragged our feet on this one for way too long. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Councillor Sarah Thomas.
Thank you, Chair. So on page 189, there's a sort of orange entry, and it says the council uses an appropriate documented option appraisal methodology to demonstrate value for money of its decisions. And then in the sort of description, it says an investment proposal template has been created and utilized. Can I have a bit of clarity on that? I don't really know what that is, or what it looks like, or how it's useful, and I may have other questions depending on the answer.
Yes, so we've developed a fairly simple investment proposal template, which as a senior leadership team we use to assess people who put spend to save proposals together. What this is saying is that we need to take this a step further and utilise something in terms of our capital planning arrangements. As I referenced to my response to the lay member Mark Owen earlier, that's something we're aware of and we'll be looking to take on board the findings from the Audit Wales review before we actually look at what that looks like. So that's a work in progress in terms of updating that template.
Okay, so would this include things like, for example, when we do consultancy and stuff like that?
No, this
No.
is purely for internal processes around spend to save initiatives at the moment.
Could I suggest then that it would be a good idea for us to apply something similar to when we're doing external consultancy work and so on, comparing it perhaps to doing it in-house and the cost benefit ratio?
Yeah, the new procurement regulations should pick that up in terms of the new requirements to do that. So we'll absolutely take that on board. Yes, we'll have to do that going forward.
Thank you.
Thank you. That concludes your question, does it, Councillor?
It does indeed. Thank you, Chair.
Lovely. Thank you. In which case, Matthew Crowley, Councillor Crowley.
Thank you, Madam Chair. I just wanted to come back to Noel Wynn's answer in terms of he was happy to say that he'd had his appraisal with Francis O'Brien, which is his direct line manager. In terms of your area, Noel Wynn, how many PDRs have you carried out? And as it filters down to the system, as you know, I formerly worked for the authority. I had 800 members of staff and only 3 supervisory staff. How do you envisage, for instance, the catering and cleaning staff of the authority to go through that PDR regime? Because, you know, without paid lip service, we haven't got the resources to do that type of work, and we never have. So whoever's got a large workforce, it's easier if you've got 5 or 6 staff working around you. But when it goes into, you know, figures of that sort of extent, how do you manage, or how do you perceive that that's going to be captured in the future? Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Crowley. You are right. Those members, those managers then, who have large teams, you know, the challenge is significantly greater in terms of the time required to undertake an appropriate appraisal with every single member of staff. In terms of, I'll come back to that a bit later, in terms of my team, yes, I've clearly held my appraisals with my direct line reports and had assurances that they've undertaken with theirs, and so it cascades down through my directorate. Back to your point with regards to, you know, the challenges for those with larger workforces, you know, I'm not acutely aware at the moment in terms of how they undertake those appraisals, but I am aware that in some organisations they do undertake sometimes group appraisals where you've got a kind of a group of staff who are within the same maybe job description area with an opportunity for them to meet on a one-to-one basis. But I do accept that the challenges in those areas are quite significant, and that's something I'm sure we'll have to work with those service managers to understand, you know, the best approach to be taken in those, to ensure that every single member of staff, as Councillor Clement Williams says, has the opportunity to have that kind of "this is about me" conversation, you know, and what are the challenges that individual faces, and what support they might need individually, regardless of how long they've been in that team or not, and their personal development pathway as well. So, you know, I'm not underplaying the challenges that the organisation exists, especially, as you say, Councillor Crowley, in those areas with large workforces, in particular job descriptions.
Thank you. I think it's safe to say that we will need to cover this point again when we get to, as I said earlier, the draft self-assessment, because the employee survey figures that are enclosed within that document, and I think it, off the top of my head, page 356, paint a different picture. It's talking about 50% of people feeling that they've had those surveys. But we can come back to that point later. Does anybody else want to raise any matters with regard to the annual governance statement itself? No, in which case the document is for information, so we note the report and we move on to agenda item 8, which is the closure of the accounts, which obviously is an important set of papers. So Hugh, I believe you're introducing.
Yeah, I think I'll hand over to Audit Wales in the first instance, Chair, who can introduce their report, which is their findings from the work they undertook in terms of the audit about 24-25 accounts, which has led to them issuing an unqualified opinion here today. So I'll hand over to I'm assuming Jason in the first instance, or maybe Karen. So thank you, John.
That's great, thanks you. So yeah, this is the usual report that we provide following completion of our audit of the statement of accounts. I'll take the report as read, so I won't go through it in detail, but just pull out some of the key points for your attention. So as you know, we don't provide absolute assurance. We work to the concept of materiality. Those levels are shown for your information on page 6 of the report. As Hugh mentioned, the main audit finding is that we're looking to provide an unqualified audit opinion once the accounts are approved today and the letter of representation signed and provided to us. So those are shown for your information in Appendix 3 and 4 of the report. So what that means is that the accounts are essentially materially correct. So it's essentially a clean audit opinion. So we're looking to provide, we're one uncorrected misstatement I need to provide to you. That's set out on page 7. So this is an error that we identified, which is below the materiality level set out on page 6, but above the trifling level that we've set, which is also set out on page 6. So the uncorrected misstatement is linked to our work on IFRS 16, which members might recall was a new accounting standard that was brought in this year. So testing found 4 leases which had not been accounted for under IFRS 16. So under the auditing standards, we're required to report that to you and request an amendment. And where it's not amended, request in writing the reasons why. And the council has done that through the letter of representation on page 33 of our report. But I know the letter of representation is also later on the agenda item, so probably be covered there. It's important to note that this error was about 680,000. So as I mentioned, it's not material. So even if not amended, it doesn't change the audit opinion that we're looking to provide, which, as I mentioned, is unqualified. So there were some other corrections arising from our audit. They're summarised in Appendix 2. Again, I wasn't going to go through those on a line-by-line basis. You'll see from Appendix 2, the majority were linked to either property, plant and equipment or IFRS 16, which, being the largest balances in the accounts or being a new accounting standard this year, is probably expected to come from our audit work. There's no other issues to report to you. So the only other thing I just wanted to mention is placing on record our thanks to Hugh and the finance team, some of whom are sat with Hugh today, for the helpful and constructive way that they worked with us through the audit, which is very much appreciated as always. So I'll pause there and I'm happy to take any questions.
Thank you. Does anyone have any questions at this point? I know obviously we will want to come back to the uncorrected misstatement matter. Yeah, maybe.
No, Chair. So yes, so as you can see from the audit report, there are a number of corrected misstatements and one unadjusted item. And really the reason for not adjusting that item was that we were actually working through that amendment literally on the morning that we were due to publish the Governance and Audit Committee papers. So if we had chosen to adjust, it would have meant us having to obviously transact everything through a financial ledger, prepare a new statement of accounts, track the changes internally to make sure we were happy, hand over to Audit Wales for them to do the same thing. And we just wouldn't have met the publishing deadlines for this committee. So it was a call that I made as the Section 151 officer to say, I'm happy to bring these accounts forward with this unadjusted item on the basis that Audit Wales would issue a unqualified opinion. Still, we will then adjust for it in 2025-26 because it doesn't materially affect the accounts. So if we had uncovered it sooner, we would have adjusted in line with the other things they found. But it was literally a timing issue. We could not have done it and met this committee, which would have then required another special Governance and Audit Committee towards the end of the month, which I and Audit Wales, I think, were happy to not have to go to. So that's the reason, Chair, for that. Thank you.
Thank you, and that's a good explanation. Maybe it's a question. I know you're going to cover it next year, but maybe it's a question of adjusting the Governance and Audit Committee timetable to allow for things like that to be covered in future years, should they arise. I don't know. I certainly wouldn't want to have had an extra Governance and Audit Committee. I remember we did last year because we had IT problems, which meant we were not porous in any sense whatsoever. But certainly I understand. Councillor Clement Williams, your hand is raised.
Thank you, Chair. The one question that I did have, who was just covered off, but I'd like to second the thanks to the team. As an ex-cabinet member for finance, I know how hard they work, and it's constant. It doesn't really stop. You know, at the end of the year, it just starts all over again. So would like to ask who to pass on my thanks to them for their hard work as always. Thank you, Chair.
Yeah, thank you, Councillor Clem Williams. Yes, certainly I will pass thanks on to the team members sitting with me today, but it's not just these people here, it's the wider team. So thank you for that. And we'll get that thanks passed on. Diolch.
Thank you. Andrew Baggy, your hand is raised.
Yeah, thanks, Chair. And again, just to echo, really good news in terms of the work that's gone into the accounts and the results. I think my question around the unadjusted differences has been resolved. Happy with that explanation. I suppose it might be a question for Jason, though. Jason, you mentioned there about IFRS 16. It's still relatively new. I suppose I'm thinking about this in the context of one unadjusted error, but there's quite a few things that have gone through and are all related to assets and leases. Is there any sort of root cause that we as a local authority need to consider going forward to try to help this area in the future? Or do you think it's just a one-off in terms of adapting to the new IFRS standards?
Yeah, thank you for the question. Yeah, I think we've done a number of these audits, or started a number of these audits across other councils and other bodies, and Neath isn't on its own in terms of IFRS 16. As I mentioned, it's new, so I think it was always going to pick up errors, but hopefully the lessons will be learned going forward, and the errors will be less next year. But yeah, I think it's common across all bodies at the moment because it's so new. So no issues, I don't think, as long as the lessons are picked up and taken forward.
Right,
Thank you. Hugh, you want to come in?
Yeah, if I can come in there and just sort of put some more context. Obviously, as you say, IFRS 16 is a new standard that's come in for this financial year. So we did a lot of work in conjunction with Audit Wales in terms of prior to the introduction, trying to understand what was required. We purchased a bespoke computer system to capture information for us to try and produce the accounting entries correctly. What I think we did was underestimate the amount of work that was required in terms of checking things like contract documents and things like that, and putting procedures and controls in place. So what we will learn for going forward is to make sure that our own internal processes before we actually prepare the accounts on an IFRS 16 basis, that we've done those checks and balances that should minimise these errors. But it was new, it was different, and I think working with Audit Wales colleagues, we've got to a position today on the 9th of September where we've got an unqualified opinion in front of us, which I think is a great result. So thank you for the question.
Thank you. Mark, you want to add something?
Yes, thanks, Chair. Yeah, just a question for Jason. It's just curious to know to what extent you apply an ITGC approach to the audit. Obviously, noting Hugh's comment there about new systems and controls. Do we use any sort of GRC tooling in there, looking at segregation of duties, or are we sort of not? I mean, I know lots of external auditors still don't take that approach, but yeah, just curious to understand that.
Yeah, so any systems that are used as part of the accounts, or any significant systems, we have reviewed by our IT specialists, our IT auditors, so they would look at all the controls within the system, and this was one in particular that was picked up for review this year. So our IT specialists did look at the system in terms of, as you mentioned, the segregation of controls and the inputs and the outputs for the system. So yes, it was.
Okay, and just a quick question for Hugh, I guess, off the back of that. Do we have some sort of matrix that identifies kind of low to high risk conflicts within roles allocated in finance and the wider business? Sort of something that keeps us honest again.
No, we don't have anything. We've obviously have segregation of duties in terms of who can do what, and checks and balances in terms of who can prepare ledger and entries and check them, but we don't have a particular matrix as such. So if you've got an example of best practice there, Mark, I'd happy to have a look at it.
Yeah, I mean, and it's kind of in the lines of what you're talking about here. It is a segregation of duties matrix, but it'll kind of flag off across the different roles and the T codes that people have, and then if you don't have that sort of automated or embedded in the system, how you reference that for change governance, that you're keeping yourselves honest and that high risk stuff gets flagged up to mitigate. So yeah, happy to speak about that separately if you don't have anything like that. Yeah.
Okay. Thank you. It's great.
Thank you. I believe that covers all the points that anybody would want to make about item 8. So this report is for information. So we note the report and then we obviously move into item 9, which is the closure of accounts themselves. Obviously, the Audit Wales intention to issue an unqualified true and fair opinion affects these papers, and my personal congratulations to you and all your colleagues for everything you've done leading up to the closure of accounts. So Hugh, do you want to introduce us?
Yeah, thank you, Chair. So yeah, as you say, a follow on from the Audit Wales report, these are the actual now final statement of accounts that we need Governance and Audit Committee to approve today, along with permission to sign a letter of representation. Again, just to reciprocate Jason's thanks to the Audit Wales team for the way that they engage and work constructively with the teams in Neath Talbot. It's not something that's replicated across Wales, but we do have a real positive working relationship, obviously accepting each other's roles and responsibilities, but hopefully we can work that way going forward as well. So, and again, obviously thanks to my team and everybody who just worked so hard to get these here today. As I say, to have an unqualified opinion on the 9th of September is for me an excellent result, and I can't take any praise. It's all down to these guys and the team. So thank you, Chair.
Thank you. And I think it's worth noting that Neath Council have been in a position to deliver this work, not just on time, but always at an earlier time than they're obliged to. So it's a significant achievement, and one that's been delivered for quite a number of years, if I remember correctly, Hugh.
Yes, correct.
So obviously it's a lengthy set of papers. The recommendations are contained on page 231. Does anyone want to raise any particular points? No? In which case the recommendations are that we, as members of the Governance and Audit Committee, approve the letter of representation, which is shown at Appendix 1, approve the final 2024 Statement of Accounts as included in Appendix 2, and that the committee gives me authorisation as chair of the committee to provide my electronic signature for the letter of representation and the Statement of Accounts. I obviously take my role very seriously, and I know my colleagues do too. So that's the recommendation. Please, can I have a proposer and seconder for those points?
I propose, Chair.
I'll second.
Thank you, Councillor. Thank you, Councillor. So therefore, you're happy with the outcome?
Yeah, the recommendation's been approved.
There we are. Thank you. In which case, my signature will be appended to the documents and everything will be sent off as appropriate. So thank you all very much, and thank you for joining us this morning.
Thank you very much.
We'll just pause a second whilst comments. Thank you. So the next agenda item is the draft self-assessment for 2024-2025. We have touched upon a few points briefly when we were talking about other matters. And this is a report under your name, Nowen. Are you going to introduce it, or?
I'm going to pass over as Louise introduced the item, Chair.
Thank you.
Thank you, Chair. So this item is for decision. The role of Governance and Audit Committee is to review the self-assessment and make any comments which are recommendations which change the conclusions that we've drafted. And then these will be proposed to Cabinet for consideration on the 29th of October. So you'll remember this was introduced, the self-assessment was introduced as part of the Local Government and Elections Act back in 2021. And there's a requirement for us to produce a corporate self-assessment, which ultimately focuses on 3 basic questions. How well do we do it, how do we know, and what and how can we do better? So I think it's fair to say over the last 4 years, our approach is developing in how we are undertaking the self-assessment. Obviously, we are being as transparent and honest as we can be. We are working across 8 core activity areas, and this year we have widened the role that we do to gather feedback from the public leadership team. So that includes the chief executive, directors, and heads of service. We've, as you can see in your appendix 1 of the self-assessment, we've stated what evidence we've collected throughout the year to help us form our opinions. That's something new for this year. Whilst we knew what evidence we were using in previous years, this is now set out in the self-assessment itself. The other change that we made, or the other addition that we made this year, is to survey those within the corporate leadership team around their feelings on the enabling programme, as you will. So the likes of procurement, financial services, and digital services. As you can see within the self-assessment, there is a big piece of work undertaken around staff, which is done by the Chartered Institute of Professional Development. So we didn't feel that that needed to be duplicated within the survey. A really big lesson for us is the feedback that we gained from the corporate leadership team was around widening that survey to include accountable managers and supervisors so that we can get a wider opinion. And that's something that we are taking into account and developing over the autumn. So on page 10 of the appendix, so it's page 348 on your path, it sets out the overall council assessment, which still sits at mature, moving towards leading. And then we've set out the 8 individual core areas and their scorings then. I think we've reflected, I suppose, especially on risk management. Over the last 2 years, we've set it back in our scoring because we do understand that there's a lot more work for us to do. Whilst we've looked at the sort of visual elements and how we present our risk assessment, we need to undertake further work, and it was not going to be highlighted by the findings in the Audit Wales report. We've also got within the plan 19 improvement areas which have been identified to be looked at for the next year. Some of these do overlap with what was said out in the annual governance statement as well. So that's the self-assessment. I'm happy to take any questions.
Thank you. No one?
Yeah, just to add to what Louisa said, and firstly, thanks to Karen, Louise, and the team for pulling this corporate self-assessment together. I think it's fair to say I've been here for just over 2 years now, that the authority is maturing in its approach to the corporate self-assessment. We're sticking to the same model, we're just adapting, I guess, as we move forward. And I think it's recognition to our desire to become significantly stronger in terms of the way we approach these areas of work. And that comes with maturity, comes with being prepared to evolve. And I think the decision we've taken this year to roll back slightly where we believe we were with the risk assessment is evidence of our maturing approach to kind of that honest take on where we are with certain things. And Louise mentioned the 19 improvement areas. For me, understanding where we are, being self-aware of where we are as an authority is important, and putting in arrangements to ensure that we continuously improve moving forward is also very important. So, I'm confident that those 19 improvement areas, will be undertaken. And, again, it'll be interesting to see where we are when we undertake the appraisal 25-26, accepting that we are taking an even broader approach and gaining even further insight from broadening that survey to accountable managers. So there'll be in excess of 100 senior managers across the organisation that will have an opportunity to input to this process moving forward. So thank you, Chair. Like Louise said, happy to take any questions.
Thank you. I know obviously I've seen this each year it's come along, and you can see there's been a development. I comment that I still find it difficult to read, and I know it's not really meant to be read in this sort of format, and difficult purely and simply because it's set out as a pictorial sort of report in a way. But that's just an aside comment. We will need to come back to the question of appraisals and stuff, but do colleagues have any points they want to raise? I know I believe there might be some points people wanted to raise.
Nice question.
Yes,
Chair.
I'm
just interested, against each of these 8 categories generally, does the council actually have a target for where they want to be on each of them? So do you want to be leading in every category? Is it worth the investment to get there?
Thank you. That's an excellent question. And I guess there's always a balance, isn't there, between the level of investment you need to put into to become leading in these areas. I think ultimately for me, a measure of where we are will be in our annual employee survey that we undertake. That's the true test of where our organisation feels we are, where our staff feel we are in terms of certain areas. We haven't set a target. Clearly, we'd love to be leading in all of these areas. I think what's important for me is that we demonstrate continuous service improvement and continuous improvement in these areas. And if that and the evidence suggests that takes us into leading, then fine. I think what's important to understand is that although this is a requirement in the Local Government Elections Act 2021, there was no specific format or approach put in place. So there was some guidance, and each authority has been allowed to put its own framework and its own model in place. I think the importance of the model that Neath Talbot Council have put in place, it does allow us, as the Chair said, to look back over previous iterations, because we've kept it consistent in that respect, see how we are progressing with regards to our understanding of where we are as an authority. But we would love to be leading. If we had unlimited finances, unlimited capacity within our kind of enabling program, then I'm sure we'd be making even greater strides even faster. But I think the progress that this articulates we are making is a credit to the workforce that we've got. Yeah.
Thank you.
Can I ask a follow on as well? Just clearly on risk management. So I can see the dials move backwards. A bit of reflection there. I mean, for me, what I don't know is what the Audit Wales report has said about your risk management arrangements, because we haven't seen that. I mean, your own narrative itself also talks about just having introduced like a risk appetite thing. So I would argue, or think at least, that would take a while to embed and become mature in itself. So, and in past governance and audit committees, there's been lots of talk about improvements necessary in your corporate risk management arrangement. So that's just my challenge is, is mature the right rating for it? And I think partly what's come with the Audit Wales report would be a very interesting steer for me.
Yeah, I don't disagree. I think we had the final iteration of that Audit Wales piece of work a couple of weeks ago, so we will be preparing our organisational response form to that and submitting that, and then that will go through our strategic leadership team, our cabinet, and it will come here to the governance and audit. And it is an area that this committee has regularly identified, and many questions often come with the strategic risk schedule when we bring it here. I think what we've done initially was just to strengthen its appearance in terms of how it appeared, and inserted more, the scoring that wasn't there before. You just had the colour scheme. So we've made a number of improvements in terms of how it's presented and how we come to those conclusions, setting target scores, etc. I think you'll see when you get the Audit Wales report is that we still have a long journey to go on with regards to embedding it within the organisation as a real live working document that's continuously referenced, as the Chair often says. It is and needs to be a live document, or something that we just bring to our management team on a quarterly basis. So when we take budgetary decisions, when we take employee decisions, what our risk register saying in that space, and it's been highlighted around the report that came personally with discharge of care as well with the health work. So, I think there's a journey to go on. You're right about the risk appetite was something that we brought in 18 months ago. There's a need to embed that within the organisation as well. That's in its really early days in that piece of work. But I think, it's certainly on the radar. It's certainly on the radar of this committee on a regular basis. So I think, once that audit wage report lands as well, I'm sure we'll enter into a far more detailed conversation about where that particular piece of work is.
I'll stop talking then. Okay, so you work into the Audit Wales report, but can you confirm that their findings are in line with your absolute score in there? So is the message coming out in line with a mature, or is it better or worse than that?
I think the scoring, and this is maybe it is subjective, in that in terms of how we view it. And like I said, we have moved the dial back in relation to that. I think that's a fair reflection of some of the areas that Audit Wales have identified. And like I said, it is a journey that we are on, and we do need to strengthen our approach. So, yeah, for me personally, I think it's the fact we've moved the dial back to being on the lower end of mature is probably in the right place. Hopefully with the response that we provide for the Audit Wales report and the actions that come out of that, we can strengthen our position in that sense.
So if you took mature in itself as a scale, if you're at the lower end of mature, thank you.
That's interesting, because I hadn't thought about it being lower ends. I was just seeing it in the, in wherever the quadrant was. So maybe we need to pay more attention to where exactly the arrow is pointing, but that's for a future day. Now, when is that report likely to come to this committee?
End of October? Yeah, 20th October.
Right.
Yeah.
Because obviously I'm conscious we've got training sessions.
That's right.
Set up for the
better this time, hopefully than last time.
Yeah, so I was wondering whether or not it was going to inform part of those conversations, because obviously until we've seen the report, we can't judge. But that's for us to bear in mind.
Yeah.
I can see a number of lay colleagues' hands are up. Mark, you're first.
Okay, thanks, Chair. Yeah, just firstly, I mean, I can see some evolution in the document since the last couple that we've seen, so that's positive. So, kind of well done on that. I think just echoing the Chair's point, is still very heavy on narrative, though. Albeit I do quite like the visual references. I think it's obviously noting the point that sometimes these are kind of a bit of a catch-all if you're in the amber bucket or whatever, right? So I think that is a good point to make. Just on the Audit Wales report, so can I just check? So is that a final report now, but obviously hasn't made committee due to timing, or is it with you for management responses with a view to being finalised?
No, the report has been finalised by Audit Wales, and we are finalising our management organisational response form, and then we'll be bringing that, as Karen said, it'll go through our strategic leadership team, our corporate cabinet, and it'll come to governance and audit towards the end of October. Owen.
Okay. Okay. Thanks, Owen. Yeah, and just one last comment, and I think you've all kind of touched on it really. I think when you're looking at these ratings and self-assessing yourself, ultimately it's inextricably linked to your risk appetite, because depending on where you are as an organisation, we're not a global pharma or a tier 1 bank, or necessarily part of the kind of more sensitive CNI in the UK. So where you need to be, you need to make that decision of how good you need to be, and then you take the actions to get yourself within risk appetite. So when we really fix the risk management framework, and you've kind of properly assessed the risks to where the council needs to be, that will kind of help you better inform some of these decisions next year, because to the point made, you may not need to be leading, but it's got to follow suit. And as I say, these areas are inextricably linked to your risk framework.
Yeah. The word leading is interesting as well, because leading implies that in the foremost of a group, and I assume every council is wanting to be leading. And therefore, you'd need to change that particular word. But that's just a comment which, not everybody can be first unless it's equal. No,
Yeah, it's an interesting point, Chair. Like I said earlier, there was no specific guidance given to us in relation to the corporate self-assessment. Some local authorities embed the corporate self-assessment within the annual report. And if you look at some of those, it's very difficult to see the wood from the trees, therefore, in terms of where they position themselves. So I think we've continued with this approach. I think it does allow us to have a specific focus, therefore, on the corporate self-assessment. And, you know, the same focus then goes on to the annual report when that is published as well. Yeah, you know, it is subjective. You know, there's no matrix of scoring behind any of this. You know, obviously we do look at a significant amount of what evidence kind of substantiates our thinking in this space. And I think for me, providing we're consistent in the way we look upon this, that's the most important aspect of this. So, you know, we pitch ourselves in year one, and provided we're consistent and we evolve, then hopefully we understand how we're improving or where we may be stagnating in certain areas. I think the danger in anything like this is that you change the model and all of a sudden you're starting again. So at least, you know, whether it's right or wrong, in terms of how we've gone about it, it's been a consistent approach over the last 4 years, and we are allowing ourselves to understand whether we are maturing, whether we are moving into leading some of these areas.
Thank you. I suspect that obviously this is going to go to Cabinet. I know colleagues have got some questions. It's going to go to Cabinet for approval in October. It will be interesting to see what they make of it, and it will be interesting to know on that basis what you need to report back to us in due course. So, Andrew, your hand is up next. Andrew Bagley.
Yeah, thanks, Chair. I mean, in terms of this report, yeah, I agree. It's certainly evolved since previous iterations that we've seen over the years. I think in particular, there's lots of references really to support the assessment, which I think is good, but it's also worth noting that sometimes less might be better, perhaps. So there are two comments really. One was about I suppose, the leadership and management, but also getting the best from the workforce. And I think on both of them, we're either leading or moving close to leading. But I suppose what I flagged really at the sort of pre-meet was the two stats that stand out then. If we are sort of leading in terms of leadership and management, or leading in terms of getting the best from our workforce, why is it that 40%, well, over 50% of our staff would say they're not getting those regular appraisals, and of the ones that are having them, only 40% said they're looking to the future? So I suppose it's that sort of information in there. Does that sort of stack up with the other strong assessments that are in the report? And my second comment was around, just bear with me when I flick between screens. It was on the action plan, which is for 25-26, but it does make references to certain things that we're going to do for March 25. Now, we're saying it's ongoing. It feels like ongoing is almost like a cover for behind progress a little bit, because I get these things have moved on, but I think ongoing, if it was due to be achieved by March 25, can we really say it's ongoing in this current plan for 25-26? Does that make sense?
Thank you, Chad. I'll pick up on your first observation. Then I think in terms of where we position ourselves around leadership and management, in terms of that leading category, I think when we look at the evidence provided overall, that would indicate why we put ourselves into that kind of leading category. However, we have recognised you know, the significant amount of work that does need to be undertaken when it does come to staff appraisals, and I think that's, you know, reflected you know, in kind of relatively low percentages you see there around the employee survey feedback, and it demonstrates why it's important to undertake those employee survey feedbacks. But, you know, not wishing to repeat some of the comments I made earlier around questions asked by Councillor Clement-Williams and Councillor Crowley, you know, we have identified this as a significant area of work for 25-26. I think if you look at this particular report, you know, the staff survey was undertaken last year, concluded, I think it was May of 24, and importantly, we've been able to then ensure that in our 25-26 workforce strategy delivery plan, that we've included that as a key area of work to be undertaken. So that's why I guess we position ourselves in the leading, but accepting, as you can see from the infographic there, that we do have a significant amount of work to do around our staff appraisals.
Thank you. When are you planning to do another staff survey? Because if you're trying to capture the same sort of information every year, and you did this for this one in May 2024, when are you going to do the next one?
So we've agreed that we'll be undertaking that this month in September 2025. I think it mentioned it somewhere within this self-assessment report that we've agreed to undertake in September 2025. I think analysing the data from the previous survey took longer than we'd hoped, and therefore, it didn't seem right to go out in April, May of this year when we hadn't long concluded the analysis of that employee survey. I think, I'm confident the team have put better practices in place to analyse that employee survey feedback so we can get it in front of managers much sooner this time around, and they can play a more important role then in informing us when we look at our business planning for 25-26. So it will take place in September 2025. I'm not sure when it'll open exactly, 15th of September, there we are. So it will remain open for, I'm assuming, at least a month or so, and then we'll progress in analysing that data.
Thank you. Councillor Crowley, I can see your hand is raised.
Yeah, thank you, Chair. Not to labour the point, Noelwyn, obviously our school-based catering and cleaning staff, there are over 800 of them based at all our primaries and secondary comprehensive schools. They have no access to computers, and of course they are part-time, predominantly female workforce, which are the best workforce, I have to say, because it was a former workforce of mine. But however, how are you going to intend to get that information out to them, given that they only work 2, 3, 4-hour shifts a day with no access to computers? It's always a challenge, Noelwyn, but it's 10, 12 years since I left the authority now, and I just wonder how we've moved forward with that. Thanks, Noelwyn.
Thank you, Councillor Crowley. So as I said earlier, I fully appreciate the challenges we have in certain areas of our workforce, and it won't only be that section. We've got domiciliary care workers, care workers. We've got a number of frontline workforce areas with managers, supervisors of large teams in place. I can't give you a specific answer to your question today, Councillor Crowley. I will have to go back to my team and also maybe discuss with Andrew Thomas within education in terms of the approaches that we could be taking there. But hopefully I can bring back a more detailed response to that specific question around how we will approach those areas of our workforce where, like I said, certain line managers have a number of staff that need an appraisal. I hope that's okay, Councillor Crowley.
Yes, thank you, Noelwyn.
Thank you. I believe I see no further raised hands. I believe that. Oh, certainly.
Can I just come in? It's just in response to Andrew's comment about some of the end dates. So I've seen one, and if the committee are happy, we can take that as feedback in terms of undertaking a review of our CPMF. We can reword that actually, because actually the action's around implementing it now, which will take it into the next financial year. So if the committee are happy, I could take that as an amendment suggested by the committee.
Certainly, that would make sense. Interestingly, we talked about ongoing and in progress at the last meeting, and ongoing seemed to be never ending, and in progress was to have an end date. I still don't get the point, but anyway, yes, that would make a good recommendation, and that was really what I was going to ask next, because obviously we need to review and comment upon this document. We've commented quite a bit. So other than that recommendation, are there any other recommendations that we want to make before this goes to Cabinet for Cabinet to consider? Comments? Big? Mike? No? Right, in which case, we obviously have had a detailed conversation about this. We will want to see progress. We will want to understand certain things in the future. But other than that one recommendation, the document will go to Cabinet in its current form. So thank you very much indeed. I'm just going to say that we're going to very briefly amend the agenda. So I'm going to say that item 12 will be heard now, and that's the urgent items. And that's whether there are any urgent items at my discretion as chair of this committee to be put or to be heard now. And I can confirm there are no urgent items. And then we will move on to what would have been number 11, which is Internal Audit Update Report 2025-2026, which we will hear now. And that starts at pages 375. So Steph, you are, as an internal auditor, going to introduce the report.
Thank you, Chair. This is the first internal audit update report for 25-26 and confirms the plan position as at 31st of July, including finalised activities up to that date. So the report within the pack confirms strong progress to date against the plan, including 16 report outcomes, 2 concluded post-audit reviews, which is where we follow up recommendations to ensure they're implemented, and also wider activity delivery. Of note within the pack, because we have got quite a lot in there, report reference 13, NFI potential duplicate creditors payments, has identified 61,000 for recovery by the council, which is seen as a positive outcome. The live kilometre support grant review at report reference 11 has identified £2,000 of additional grant to be claimed. And also our commissioned ICT auditors are progressing development of our ICT audit needs assessment with myself, the Chief Digital Officer and other sources. And we expect this to be concluded at the end of this month with outcomes reflected in the October committee pack. 2 internal audits within the period reported have resulted in limited or no assurance outcomes. A management update is provided at Appendix 2 for the corporate complaints limited assurance outcome. Now, what I want to emphasise to committee is this assurance type should not be seen as negative. The audit was completed at request of the corporate director based on appropriate risk assessment, has been fully supported by officers and has resulted in audit recommendations and a structured action plan that is being taken forward currently by officers. The findings and management update for report reference 12, which is the no assurance outcome, will be discussed at agenda item 14. Thank you, Chair.
Thank you very much. I have 2 questions. One on page 397, there's a reference to section 106. I'm unsure or unsighted as to what section 106 is, and maybe it could be covered, please.
Thank you. Section 106 can also be termed as planning obligations. So they're a legally binding contract between a developer and a local planning authority that operates alongside the planning permission. So it requires developers to carry out specific planning obligations when they implement the planning permission. So it can be or include the nature of the development, building something specifically, or securing a contribution or other form coming through to support that planning obligation. So that's what section 106 is. And with the reason why it's on the plan is because section 106 in its nature, the management, monitoring and delivery of it can sit across a number of services, for example, planning, legal, etc. We've included it in the plan. Alongside this, there's been some other local authorities reporting limited and no assurance in the area to do with management and monitoring, hence it coming through to the plan and staying on there for the current year.
Thank you. And I had a second question which relates to page 395 and the heading additional learning needs out of county placements. Obviously a joint expert review has been commissioned by the Chief Executive and I'm just wondering when that's going to be completed and where that review is going to be reported.
Thank you for the query, Chair. I don't have the answer to that at this point, but I will link with the relevant heads of service. The review will sit across 2 directorates, both education and social care. So what I'll do, I'll confirm the lead senior officer, the lead member sponsor, and that reporting route. Thank you.
Thank you. And obviously, it would be interesting to know what the report contains, because we could be talking about just a small number of children, and we could be talking about a larger number of children. But anyway, look forward to hearing that information in due course. Councillor Crowley, you've got a question?
Just for further information, Madam Chair, regarding Section 106 monies, it's very good and it's beneficial for communities. So if there's a large planning application that's taking place, for instance, a wind farm in your area, then the developer has to give Section 106 money to the community for aspects of what they require. So it's a very good scheme in terms of kickback to the communities. I myself, in the Sanfes East, have benefited from some Section 106 money, as my other colleagues have across the county. So Section 106 is one of the dream tickets, really, for community money that you wouldn't ordinarily have, Madam Chair. I just thought that'd be maybe useful in its explanation. Thank you, Madam Chair.
Thank you very much indeed. Does anybody have any other points they wish to raise at this point? No. Mike Spanner?
Just a very quick question, I think. So I know there was some 24-25 carryover into the plan for your staff, but you report in 27% delivery to July 2025. So that sounds very reasonable. So I just want to say well done to you and the team. I just wanted to ask, are you still confident you're on track to deliver your plan by the end of the year?
That's a really good question. So, and thank you for the feedback. I'm currently forecasting us to achieve the 85% plan target by year end. But what I do understand is that this is a forecast. So impacts, for example, if we've got an increased number of investigations coming through, and also team position, turnover, sick leave, etc., could impact that later on in the year. So the response is 85% is where we forecast to be. And I do have some mitigating controls in place to support that too. So if we do see any other shift in planned delivery, our current ICT audit days contract also enables us to commission operational audit days if needed, should the need arise. So forecast 85%, yes, and if there's any change to that position, I will ensure that committee are updated in due course.
That's very clear. Thank you.
Thank you. I see no further hands raised. So obviously this report is for noting and the appendices are for noting. And therefore we do so and move on to the next agenda item. So the next point is that we are going to move out of public session, and that's in respect of the Local Government Act 1972 authorisation, and therefore we are going to go into private session. I will need a proposer and seconder for that answer.
I'll move, Chair.
Thank you, Councillor Clement Williams. Seconder, please. Thank you. Thank you. Mike Spanner had just beaten you to it, Councillor. So thank you very much indeed. So just to confirm.